Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Heather and I like to talk about books. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through the 15 books that I cannot wait to read in 2023. Some of these books have been on my TBR for months or years now, and I think it's about time I cross them off my TBR. So grab a drink, grab a warm beverage, tea, coffee, whatever suits your mood. Get cozy, and let's get into the books. First up, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I've been seeing this book all over BookTube for so long now, and it's definitely about time I read this book for myself. This book is about a special cafe in Tokyo, Japan, where people can visit and travel back in time, which is a concept that I absolutely love reading about. The what ifs of life, the what if I had gone down this path or traveled to this place or met this person. I just think that is such a fun concept to follow. The only catch with this book is you have to come back to present time before the coffee gets cold. I'm really interested to pick this one up. Let me know if you've read this one and what your thoughts are, but I do think that this is going to be a 5-star read for me. Next up, we have Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jadrowski. This book has such amazing reviews. I've seen so many other booktubers talk about this book and say how much they loved it. Also giving me Call Me By Your Name vibes, which was a 4-star, I believe, read for me back in 2022. This book does follow a queer love story, and that's honestly all I really know about this one. For certain books, I like to go in more so not knowing about the plot. So I don't know too much about this one, but I do have a feeling I'm going to love it because I hear that the writing is absolutely incredible. I always love a tragic love story, and I hope that this one lives up to the hype. Next up, we have Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This book has been on my TBR for years now. I believe it was 2020 when I read Americana and Half of the Yellow Sun by this same author, and I loved both of those books, and I have a feeling I'm going to love this one as well. This novel takes place in Nigeria during the military coup and follows two siblings, Kambili and Jaja, as they are sent to live with their aunt. I always love reading about family stories and also reading books that take place in different parts of the world because I just find that so interesting to read and learn about. And I think it's crucially important to read books based in places that you're not familiar with so that you can learn a little bit more about the world. So I'm so excited to pick this one up, and I'll be sure to let you know what I think about it. Next, we have Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is another one that I have seen so many people talking about and about how much they love it. This book has been on my TBR for so long now, and for some reason, I just never think to check it out of the library. This book was also shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction 1 or 2 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Obviously, that means that it is going to be a good read. As far as I understand, this novel focuses on mental illness within a marriage, and that's all I really know. Again, I think this is another type of book that I just want to go in not knowing very much so that I can come out on the other side with my own opinions about it. But I am very intrigued to pick this one up sooner rather than later. And like with all of these other books, I am so excited to dig my teeth into it. Next up is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Surprisingly enough, I have not read anything by Emily Henry yet. I know so many people love her books, and it just had never really been the right time for me to pick it up for whatever reason. So 2023 is for sure going to be the year that I read Book Lovers. This book also intrigued me a little more than her other books. I believe she wrote People We Meet on Vacation and Beach Read, if I'm not mistaken, and both of those books definitely do intrigue me, but Book Lovers has the word book in the title, so automatically I am much more intrigued to read this one first. A very brief description of this one, just from what I understand about it. It is about a badass literary agent named Nora who begins a romantic relationship with a book editor named Charlie. I don't typically read romance very often, but for me, a good romance needs really good banter between the love interests, banter that is witty and comical, but also very flirtatious. So if this book has all of those things, then I'm sure it will end up being a 5-star read for me. Next up is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. The blurb doesn't give much away for this one, but I do believe it involves a murder of the main character's daughter. However, the main character is very ill, but she is still determined to crack the case of who murdered her daughter. Like I said, the blurb really doesn't give you very much, which I do like going into a book not knowing much, as I again have already said. But a couple people that I've seen review this book say it's just absolutely magnificent. The writing is incredible. So I'm really, really intrigued by this book. Ever since I saw the cover, I thought that, oh, that is so unique. And it just seems like such an interesting read and very different from things that I typically do read. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. Next up, we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is another one that I'm sure you've been seeing everywhere. I've been seeing everywhere. It sounds absolutely incredible. It has some imperialistic components to it, and that's all I really know. That's all I really want to know. And I will definitely give you a full review of my thoughts once I finally do read it. I'm planning to pick it up this spring. I haven't seen anyone say one bad thing about this book, so I think it's for sure going to be a 5-star read for me. Next book we have is The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida by Shihan Karunatilaka. And I'm just going to read the blurb for this one because I don't think my explanation of what I think it's about will do it justice. So I'll just read this for you instead. Maali Almeida, war photographer, gambler, and closet queen, has woken up dead in what seems like a celestial visa office. His dismembered body is sinking in the serene Beira Lake, and he has no idea who killed him. In a country where scores are settled by death squads, suicide bombers, and hired goons, the list of suspects is depressingly long, as the ghouls and ghosts with grudges who cluster around can attest. Say that 5 times fast. But even in the afterlife, time is running out for Maali. He has 7 moons to contact the man and woman he loves most and lead them to the photos that will rock Sri Lanka. That sounds absolutely incredible. This book won the 2022 Booker Prize, which obviously goes to show just how amazing it is. I absolutely love the cover of this one too, and I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but the colors are just so enticing and it just sounds absolutely magnificent. Next up is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. This is another one that has been on my TBR, I think, since 2020. And to be completely upfront with you, I had actually checked this book out of the library at one time and it just sat on my coffee table. I don't know if I just wasn't in the right headspace for it at the time or it just wasn't really calling to me, but I see it on so many people's favorite books all the time. I do know that it's supposed to be a tearjerker, a very emotional read, so maybe I'll need to be in the right headspace for it, but I do for sure want to get to it this year. This one follows a young boy named Shuggie as he is living with his alcoholic mother in Scotland. I believe this book takes place in the 1980s, and I always love reading books that are set in a different time period than the one we're currently in. And I must say, I am excited to have my heart ripped out by this book. Next up is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. And once again, another book that I've had on my TBR forever. It did end up coming into the library for me one time, and I just did not take it home with me for whatever reason. I have no idea. This book takes place in Western Canada, I believe outside of Vancouver or very close to Vancouver, and it follows 5 young children who have recently been released from a residential school. This book was written by a Cree author, and I'm embarrassed to say it is the first book that I will have read to do with this type of event and taking place within Canadian history. I'm really looking forward to learning more about this via these characters and sitting down and really taking my time with this novel. And just given what we have found out in the last couple of years, all of the grave sites having to do with residential schools in Canada, I think that this is a great time to read this book, and it is an absolute must read for me this year. Next up, we have Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult. Jodi Picoult is one of my favorite authors, if not my absolute favorite. I have every single one of her books. This one I have not purchased yet, but I plan to do so soon. Every single one of her books is so different, and most of them have to do with a controversial topic that Jodi Picoult extensively researches on and then develops a story based on that topic. This is her latest book and it was just released in November. I'm actually shocked that I haven't read it yet because I usually read her books almost as soon as they come out, but this year was just a little bit different, and I do plan to purchase it soon and read it as soon as possible. This one is supposedly a murder mystery, and once again, I don't want to know too much more than that. I do think that there is sort of a bee concept somewhere in there because I believe they might harvest bees or farm bees or whatever it is you do with bees. So I am intrigued to see how those two things are linked. Jodi Picoult has a really unique way of taking everyday tasks or jobs and sort of tying them into the actual characters that she's following, and it all sort of turns into sort of a metaphor, if you will. I'm so absolutely thrilled to be picking this one up very, very soon. Next up, we have a couple of classics that have been on my TBR for quite a while now, and this one in particular has been sitting on my shelf. I don't even know how long. We moved into this house about 5 years ago, and I know I've had it longer than that, and I just haven't read it yet, and that is Jane Eyre. I believe this was my mom's copy or maybe my dad's. It's very old. It has definitely been pre-loved. So I'm really, really excited to read it. I've tried picking up this book a couple of times in the past and I just couldn't get into it at that exact moment. I do find that I sort of need to be in a very certain headspace to read certain classics. And I want to be able to take my time with this one and really enjoy it. So I'm going to have to pick this one up when I'm in a very particular mood. I'm hoping to read it in the spring or maybe the summer because it seems like more of a spring summer read to me as opposed to the winter. If you haven't heard of Jane Eyre, maybe I'll just read you a little bit from the back. Jane Eyre is a novel of compassionate love and violent emotions, important not only for its enduring popularity, but also for the position it maintains in English literature. Charlotte Bronte breaks with tradition of the day in introducing a new kind of heroine in the person of Jane Eyre, a shy, plain little girl of quiet determination who matures into a woman of strength and intelligence. The central focus of deepening characterization and poignant romance stems from her involvement with the handsome, sardonically proud aristocrat, Mr. Rochester, who I'm sure you've heard of. The web of mystery surrounding his past begins to engulf her also, as the moving story of tender love and violent passions unfolds, of his fate and of the self-sacrifice that makes it hers. So it sounds like a really interesting love story, not your typical current day romance, if you will, but that is Jane Eyre. And next up, one that I am so nervous to say is on my TBR for this year because I want to be able to finish it, but I am so scared to pick it up. I'm sorry if that makes me sound like a baby, but it is The Big Boy, none other than War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I read Anna Karenina last year at the beginning of the year, so January 2022, and I adored it. It was a few hundred pages shorter than War and Peace. I think it was 800, maybe 900 pages, and War and Peace is almost 1,000. Oh, okay, so that's not as bad as I thought, actually. Why did I think it was like 1,100 pages? Anyway, the font is really small too, if you can see that. So that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I think I'm going to tackle this one in March, maybe April. And I want to be able to take my time with it. I don't want to be reading any other books at the same time as this. I want to be able to sink my teeth completely into it because I know if I have something else on the go, I'm probably going to try to read that one instead. and I think this book is going to demand my full attention. War and Peace is a vast epic centered on Napoleon's war with Russia. While it expresses Tolstoy's view that history is an inexorable process which man cannot influence, he peoples his great novel with a cast of over 500 characters. Three of these, the artless and delightful Natasha Rostov, the world-weary Prince Andrew Bolkonsky, and the idealistic Pierre Bezukhov, illustrate Tolstoy's philosophy in this novel of unquestioned mastery. Wish me luck. Next we have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This one is called Hamnet and Judith because, and I did double check this, this was just the version that my library had. Apparently this is the Canadian version, and then the English version is the one that you've seen called Hamnet, but they are in fact the same book. So just as a little brief synopsis, this follows William Shakespeare, his family, his two young children, Hamnet and Judith, and I believe one of them passes away from an illness, unfortunately. So it takes place in the 1500s, I think. Yep, in the 1500s, and I'm just so excited to read this. I've heard so many people say so many amazing things about it. I saw it on so many people's favorites from 2022, and I am just very, very excited to finally read this one. It hasn't been on my TBR for very long, but it's been one that I've just been so interested to read, and I want to read it sooner rather than later. So you will definitely see me pick this one up in 2023. And in fact, I'm actually planning to read it within the next couple of weeks. So I'll actually be putting out a review probably at the end of February because I'm filming this video very close to the beginning of February. So that is Hamnet and Judith. Last but not least, we have Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Celeste Ng wrote one of my favorite novels of all time, which is Little Fires Everywhere. I absolutely adore her writing. I think she's an incredible author, and I'm so excited to pick this one up finally. It is on hold in my library, so I'm hoping to get it within the next few weeks or so. Our Missing Hearts is an old story made new of the ways supposedly civilized communities can ignore the most searing injustice. It's a story about the power and limitations of art to create change, the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children, and how any of us can survive a broken world with our hearts intact, which just sounds so, so good. Celeste Ng's books do typically revolve around these types of injustices, and they typically take place in an American community with a marginalized family at the center of the novel. So I'm so, so excited to pick this one up. I think, like I said, Celeste Ng is incredible, and I will be sure to let you know my final thoughts on this one. So those are all the books that I'm excited to read in 2023 and finally cross off my TBR. Let me know in the comments what books you are looking forward to reading in 2023. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel so that you can follow me as I continue to read more books this year, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!